All right, we are recording for chapter 22 of Pastor's Courage. And hey, I got the direction right. So yeah, as I said was going to happen in the previous chapter, and that wasn't just me remembering, it was also like, yeah, this is what happens. The POWs were marched out of the camp that was near the Russian front, and, well, they were just marched. So, yeah. So the German major at the front of it, it's the way it's described is haphazardly picked the direction. We're basically where the Russians, they're there. Okay, we're going the other direction. That kind of thing. Eventually, and made it sound like it was after a month. Excuse me. They made it to another camp in the south of Germany, but it was the POWs didn't think it was going to be that long. Like hours, maybe days, not a month. In this, hey, I'm just trying to check. Yeah, do need to mention that. So Coward was staying by the sergeant major who was at that work detail, and the two of them were together doing something that you might think doesn't make sense, but actually makes a lot of sense. They were trying to make sure that as they were marching out, that the POW stayed in line and didn't try to straggle off and didn't try to dawdle. For a very good reason, because they understood this is a bad situation. Don't press the German guards. Don't give them reason to start shooting you. So stay in line. But as the time wore on, and in fact that this was an emergency march. Essentially, there wasn't really food. There weren't really rations, and these people are already approaching starvation. Some did end up just falling out because, well, they were starved and they were going to die there then. So no mention of shooting, but yes, people did just drop out of line for that reason. They even came to a town where, well, they encountered some Russian POWs that were shot and killed. It's like, wait, let me read this highlight here to help give why that seems a little curious, but what would happen when the other allies entered Germany from the west, nobody seemed to know or care. There was a general reluctance to be dormant in the path of the Russians. And this is also something with regards to Hitler as well. At least I'm pretty sure part of it for why he committed suicide and had his body burned so that it couldn't be identified was because he was afraid of the Russians getting him. That they would have severely tortured him if he were alive, and even if he were dead, would have mutilated his body. There was that level of hatred. Yeah. So, and I think there were other things as well where the Russians coming in, they were pissed, they were angry, and there was reason for it. But it was also an element of, like I had mentioned before, they weren't signatories of the Hague Convention. Yes, I think it was that. No, it was the Red Cross. Regardless, they were not bound to certain rules of warfare, like the West was. The whole gentleman war thing was mentioned in a different chapter. The Russians weren't necessarily attached to that, so that would be another reason to try to avoid that. Which is why it seems odd, the idea that you're walking by and it's like, oh, there's a Russian POW that was shot. It's like, I mean, true, now that POW couldn't report what was done to him, but it's still, the Russians are going to find that. You really think they're not going to respond? Yeah. It is a very bad situation there. And I guess, one question would almost be well, what could have been done differently? I don't think it would have been possible for Hitler to surrender. I think that the way things had been built up, surrender would have been too much of a break. But it would have been it would have needed to be a total surrender, like what Japan ultimately was made to do. Which is one thing about, you see some of the people trying to rewrite history. That's exactly what it is, trying to rewrite history, that, the atomic bombs weren't necessary. It's like, well, history already proves that wrong, because we had to do it twice before they surrendered. It's like, if it was Japan was already, wanting to surrender, well, then you drop one atomic bomb, it's like, okay, we surrender. It's like, well, they kept fighting. So that's why it's no, we dropped another, and this is another part of the history that we bluffed them a little bit. I know this is not, it's World War II, so it's related. We not only dropped Little Boy on Hiroshima and then Fat Man on Nagasaki, We also told them, we will continue until you surrender. We will destroy a city every week. They're saying we're going to keep doing this every week until you surrender, complete surrender, unconditional surrender. We only had enough nuclear material for maybe one more bomb. So it's like that was quite a bluff. In theory, we could have done that once more, and then, okay, they really need to surrender, or they're not going to, and we got to do the land invasion. That's not good, because all the estimates would have been millions dead on both sides. It was the militarization of the Japanese citizens was very real, and huge concern with that, and that's why it probably is still the case. We started manufacturing Purple Hearts because we expected so many casualties, such that we're still working on that supply. We're coming up on a century from that, and it's like we're still working off that supply. That's how many casualties we expected from a land invasion of Japan, but fortunately we avoided that. But yeah, now I am just thinking, because, I mean, the Japanese, what they did as well, but they did surrender, so... But that's true. They also surrendered to us, not to the Russians. Because that was another reason we wanted to make sure that the Soviet Union couldn't start claiming a portion of Japan like they did with Germany and Eastern Europe. That is another reason why we really wanted to push for it. Japan's surrender when it happened. But yeah, so it's I do then kind of wonder. Because I don't know. That is one thing, okay? U.S. history classes, I mean. There's a lot of focus on the European theater, which I can understand that. That's fair, but I can't even think. Did we even do war crimes trials for the Japanese? I think we did. But I don't know any stories out of that. I don't know any of the history out of that. That's disappointing. Because there's still a lot of I mean, yeah, I guess it's because you didn't have the Holocaust. But still, Japan did a lot of really sick and evil shit. So it's... Yeah. I wish that we had more in the history, but you only have so much time, so... It sucks, but it is a situation. Yeah, so it also mentions it's not just POWs being marched, it's also civilians and those deported to work in these places, so that's why in one of the previous chapters... the Jews and others in Auschwitz were referred to as deportees. That's because they were taken from one part of Germany, moved there, a part of Poland moved there, and such. So they were deported to these concentration camps. But now, not this. I could believe that they would have just tried to kill all the Jews, or just not. Well, I don't remember if they would have been marching them. But the civilians, where it's yeah, you don't want to be here when the Russians come. The deportees that are kind of like the POWs, but they are civilians. They too were all being moved, so they weren't captured and freed. Okay. Ultimately, though, they get to, and they don't stay here for long. They do end up having to be marched out of here, but a camp in the south of Germany. Here were hundreds of American prisoners of war who had been captured in the fighting in France. Their natural ebullience seemed unimpaired at this sudden transition from the comparatively well-fed and decent conditions of warfare prevailing under an American command to the filth and squalor of such a huge prison camp. Coward made firm friends with several of them, impressed by their generosity and unshakable spirits. When he first stumbled into one of the barracks there, perhaps prepared to sleep blanketless on the concrete floor, he was taken under the wing of Hank and Johnny from Chicago and Detroit, respectively. They told him to share their bunk with them, and although they were in a bad way themselves, gave him half of what was left of their rations. This consisted of a thin slice of iron-hard bread and 2 sardines, but it did more to Coward than stave off immediate starvation. It brought new respect for his fellows and made him feel wanted again. In other words, it really, really boosted his morale. And to a degree, he also boosted theirs. One of the other notes... Yeah, that I have there is Coward. He gave up wanting to escape. And this is very real. very human. There's basically, I've been through so much as already. The war is coming to an end. I can wait it out. I don't need to try to escape. I don't need to put myself at risk of being killed. For that, when it's like, if I just survive, I'm getting out of this. But despite that, he does still talk with Hank and Johnny, sharing with them about how to escape, basically giving them escape classes, because they are interested, and they're also young, at 19. I am not sure how old Coward is, but he does feel like a father to them, and even if he's only like 10 years their senior, it could still be I've been in the POW camps at this point for like 5 years. I am old enough to be a father. You're only a few years old. No, I'm old enough to be a father. You know what I'm saying? The life experience counts. There's like that time has been multiplied. And they, at 19, I mean, they're still very young in life. Like, one thing I didn't note and didn't highlight it, I don't remember which it was, but he was talking to them about, where they're from and all that. And, what's their story, and how basically, I'm 19, I just graduated, starting to work in my dad's shop where they make engines. And it's like, that's it. That's all there is. That's nothing great back there. Because remember, Coward married with 4 kids already. So he definitely has a life to go back to. This guy basically doesn't have that life yet because he was just starting to have his own life. Goes off to Europe to fight. And there's a little bit there about, got a girl back home? Yeah, there's one. Maybe I will check up with her and, have some kids. And wouldn't it be nice for them to die of old age? Which that makes sense because remember, a generation prior was World War I. So it's it is reasonable that concern that there'll just be another war and that'll kill off so many of the kids. And it is actually kind of funny. Although it does, because Korea then and Vietnam, it did seem like for quite a while, it is about once every generation there was a war. It's just not, they kept growing in size, like World War I, then World War II, massive, but prior to that, like about 20 years prior, you can find a war in the world. 20 years prior to that, another war, yeah, and how, he's just almost unsure about if he can go back, or just the whole, if he had it, when graduating, thinking, I'm going to conquer the world, I'm going to go out to all this amazing stuff, and now it's like, I want to go home, I want to have a wife, I want to have kids, and I want them to just die of old age. I don't need anything else. Don't need to be a celebrity, don't need to be famous, don't need any greatness to me. Give me a home, a family, and I'm good. And the guy's almost saying this as though he's a little ashamed of it, and Coward's like, when we get out of this, we're going to drink to that, okay? I'm just like, no, that's exactly what we want. And guess what? You can go back and still have that. It's like that is also part of it as well for him. I mean, it's like, even if it turns out that girl, and it did say that, they were still kind of in contact, even if it is that doesn't work out, it's still, that there's other women there, have that as your goal, basically, go home and just have a life that isn't this. And it can be a common life. Nothing wrong with that. That's a thing, in fact, worth fighting for even. So, yeah. I mean, when you think about it, who are you going to war for? It's for the common life. You're not going to war because, I want to fight for Cary Grant, to use somebody who was alive at that time, or Bob Hope. You're not there to fight for them. I mean, they want you to fight. They support you in the fight, especially Bob Hope. Amazing man. There's a reason why he was granted by Congress honorary veteran status. Okay. So he builds up your morale, but you go to war for that common life, for the people living in that common life, for the common people. That's who you go to war for. And just imagine today, anyone in Hollywood would. That actually would be an interesting question to ask anyone serving or relatively young veterans still. It's like, is there any Hollywood celebrity that you would have gone to war thinking, I'm going to war to make sure that they stay alive? It's like, is there any one of them? It would be funny what the answers are. I was like, how many of them would just be because, great actor. It's like, I really love John Wick. So it's like Keanu Reeves. Yeah, I'll go. Or others who were just like Scarlett Johansson. Why? Do you have eyes? I'm saying, how many of them would be like that? It would be, that is a curious question. But I have a feeling a lot of them would be like, I don't give a shit about Hollywood. I'm not here for that. I'm here for my parents. I'm here for my brothers. I'm here for my sisters. I'm here for their kids. I'm here for my kids. I mean, it's like, that's who it's about. Or even just say, I'm here for the garage down the street from where I grew up, to make sure that that business that's been that family for decades potentially, it's still there when I get back. Right? I mean, it's like, that's why I do it. And it's, yeah. Yeah, let me actually see if I can just find it in here. Yeah, okay. Okay, so traded my watch long ago. Don't know what time it is. Me too, this is the American answering. But what the hell? What? Me too, but what the hell times nothing doesn't matter anymore. Kind of crazy when I think how I used to fly around trying to snick off a minute here and there. What did you do in Civvy Street? Oh, I was fresh out of college, just starting my old man's motor business and ready to go places. So this must not be Johnny or Hank, because they were 19 and that's not out of college. You go back to it, I suppose. You go back to that, I suppose? Sounds good. How would I know what I'll do? It was a good life, right enough. I know that now. God damn it, after what I've seen here, I'll really appreciate the States. But I don't know. I guess it's me for the quiet life when this lot's through. We all feel like that. A chance to live your own life for a while. You're not married? No, but there was a girl. I hear from her once in a while. Maybe we'll shack up. She's a good kid. Seems kind of important now to have a home of your own. Can you imagine? Do whatever you want. Live like decent human beings. Yeah, we might even let our kids grow up and die of old age. Embarrassed, he stopped himself. Guess I'm sounding off a bit. Then there's a little bit here about how basically how you never go home again from war because of how much it changes you. But the end is in sight. But also that with everything they've faced, their own particular ordeals, emerging hardened but infinitely humbled. For them, the world could never be quite as it had seemed before. No, Hank. Oh, no, it is Hank. No, Hank. If anyone's got any sense left at all in their nuts, this time it should be enough. Tell you what, when we do get our fingers round a glass again, we'll have a drink on what you've said. Sure we will. Well, don't worry, we'll make it. We've got to make it, haven't we? Yeah, I mean, I think what I was saying, rambling, it was ramble. Before that, it kind of aligns. But also, just it's weird trying to read aloud like that. Because my eyes start, like, going further, and I'm reading behind them. And it's like, sometimes I'm like, wait a minute, did I say that? And so I have to look back, and that was some of my hitches there. I'll get better at doing that eventually. But, yeah. Okay, so that wraps up chapter 22. That is, in fact, how chapter 22 ends. So, chapter 23... I'm just looking here. The way it starts... what I do not remember, 23 might actually end with the war ending. And then 24 covers things after the war. I'm not sure. We'll see. Because I do believe that there is some in this, but it could just be like at the end, like the latter half of 24 is stuff happening after the war. But in any case, yeah. See you then.